right, so our next guest here at Crypticon has quite a resume, and we're going to talk about that, but I suspect a lot of us are mainly going to talk about one thing that he is most iconic for. We are going to be talking to Mr. Andrew Robinson about all things Hellraiser and all things scary, exactly. So I would like you to please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Andrew Robinson.
Good day. So how are we doing? Yeah, good. I'm all right too. You know, I mean, for a guy my age, I'm still standing up, and I think I can still make sense and put words together into sentences. Anyway, it's always so bizarre. Standing up and you know, because theater is my thing. I mean, I love theater. I love being in a room with live people. I love, really just about doing anything in front of a live crowd, with certain limitations. Right. But, I find with this group, it's very different, say, from a Star Trek convention. This group, oh God. No, it's just very different. I mean, there's a lot more, there's a lot more release here. Star Trek people are very polite. They're sweet. They're wonderful. But, this crowd, there's a mad, insane quality, that I appreciate. I really do. I always expect I have no expectations. I have no idea what's going to happen. Anyway, just a few words about myself, and then, I am an actor. I've wanted to be an actor ever since I can remember. I love acting. I love doing all kinds of acting. I just finished doing my first musical, which was a wacky version of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar mashed up with the music of Weezer. And so it was called Julius Weezer. And it was one of the happiest times of my life, because basically after the assassination scene, when I get peppered with all kinds of knives, I got up and I danced and sang, and while people were killing me, and it was hilarious. It was really, truly good. But that is my life, and I don't know much about anything else, but I know a lot about acting, because that's what I do, and I've always been kind of a theater rat. I'm anything about acting, anything about like what it means to stand in front of an audience, because it's a weird profession. It's a very strange thing to want to be, and that first time when you stand up in front of an audience, you realize, well, what the fuck have I got to say to these people? Why should they come and spend X amount of dollars to what if I have to show them? And that's when the moment of truth comes, and that's when most people drop out. That's when most people drop out, because the thing is about acting, it's an act of courage as well as craft, obviously. But without the courage, craft is just sort of like going through the motions, and they can be very pleasing, especially if you're good looking and you have a nice voice and whatever. But without courage to show something other than the surface of things, there's really not much point. And which is probably one of the reasons why I'm here, because of a show like Hellraiser, which I loved doing because of those two characters. Of you being able to play this sort of like sad sack husband who hasn't a clue about what's happening to him, and this monstrous kind of eruption, literal eruption from the floorboards of life, with his blood and his precious bodily fluids spilling all over and strangling and poisoning and so forth. When I first met Clive Barker, it was like I thought, Jesus, this guy's a choir boy. He had the sweetest face. He looked about 15 years old, and we had this meeting, And it was very nice. And he said, you know, I'd like you to be in my movie. I said, okay. And I'm thinking, Jesus, what's this? Have you ever directed before? No. He says, but I've written a lot. And I said, oh, you know, okay. So he gave me his books of blood, these short stories. And I started reading them. And my hair froze. It was some of the most extraordinary writing ever. I mean, really fine, as good as anything Stephen King or anyone else was doing. And I immediately thought, oh God, I'm so glad he hired me. And it was an absolute joy. But even in that, the thing that separated Hellraiser from, say, other horror movies, or run-of-the-mill horror movies, shall I say, is that the story emerged from something real, from a dysfunctional family. I mean, it was about something. And good writers, they write for subtext. They write below the surface. And Clive certainly is that kind of writer. I think Felicia, right? Oh yeah, good. Yeah, why don't we just, you take it from here. I just sort of like, I just needed to like.
This is all you. This is all about you. We're going to do this together, a collaboration.
Behind the, you know, the table. What is this? A goddamn colloquy? Are we? Jesus, college? All right. Here we are. Okay. Yes, please.
So first off, we all thank you so very, very much for taking time out of your life to come here.
Please.
And talk about your career and talk about the impact that not just Hellraiser but other things that you've done have meant to us. And I will be opening up to questions, so please get ready with those questions. But a couple things that I just wanted to inform about your body of work, aside from Larry and Hellraiser. Yes, we have some Star Trek fans, and yes, and Garak.
Garrick is God.
I always overemphasize the ack part, so that's just me.
No, you actually, I thought you maybe studied Cardassian or something.
You have to get a little bit in there. But not only that, but he directed episodes. He's quite the director. So I mean, aside from directing Voyager, I think your daughter. Remember the show Judging Amy? He directed some episodes of Judging Amy. So he's got you're not just an actor, but you've been blessed to be able to also be behind the camera and get another perspective of what the process is like and hone your skills that way. And that's something that a lot of us are also curious about, because we've got some budding filmmakers here too. You know, we've got some people that have probably done or maybe working on their very first film, or have a couple under their belt, or some short films. And that's also something that is very important to us to know. Sure. and learn from. I mean, acting, yes, but to be able to do both and to kind of shift effortlessly from one to the other. I mean, that's very well-rounded. So we want to talk about that too. And also, that's right, X-Files. The episode, I believe, was Alpha, if anyone remembers that. We've got...
But they never gave me my morphing shot.
That's true.
That really pissed me off. I love that episode.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I grew up, you know, as a kid watching Lon Chaney turn into Wolfman. Yeah. And that slow morph thing, and it thrilled me. And when time came for me to turn into the wolf, I said to the producers, "Where the hell's my morphing shot?" I think, you know, well, we're saving money on this show.
But aside from that, though, I mean, please tell me, you folks remember a little old movie from the 70s called Dirty Harry?
Yeah.
There you go. So we're going to talk about Scorpio as well. I just want to dive right in and open up some questions for Mr. Robinson here. So please, hands up, way back there.
Is it true that you created a backstory for Scorpio?
I create a backstory for every character that I do. I mean, it's one of the actor's tools or tricks or whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's where for those of you, you know, and a few of you brought up the book that I wrote about Garrick, A Stitch in Time. That came out of you know, the backstory I created for Garrick, because I didn't know Garrick from a ham sandwich, as I said to someone when they hired me. You know, an alien, what's an alien? And so I had to write something, but I do that for all of them. And the backstory basically for the Scorpio Killer was that he was a guy who went to Vietnam. Whether or not he was deranged when he went, he certainly was completely insane when he came back.
Cool.
Wow.
And did you, aside from creating backstory for Scorpio, did you dabble in reading about Zodiac? Did you do some research
No.
back then? You just wanted to do a clean slate?
Yeah,
do your own
no,
project?
and there was enough. Nobody knew anything about Zodiac. Nobody knew anything. I mean, it was a complete mystery. The things, but they gathered. They took things from the Zodiac Killer. The fact that that his victims were black people and Catholic priests for the most part, and that he was a racist and anti-Catholic, and you know, and whatever else he was. But no, I didn't.
And it is true, you did get death threats?
Yes.
From, they called you? Is
Yeah.
that what I understand? Yeah, they called him up and he got death threats after the movie came out.
I only recently, you know, relisted my number. I was, you know, had an unlisted number for many, many years. It's kind of disturbing, you know, when somebody at the other end, you know, says, you know, your days are numbered, and in very graphic terms. But you know, that's acting is not innocent. It's not innocent. It's not a walk in the woods. It's I spent many years, you know, I created a master's conservatory program for actor training at the University of Southern California. And basically, you know, my feeling was is if there's anything else you can do in your life, you know, I was talking to people, to young people who had been accepted into the program, and I said, if there's anything else you can do in your life, do it. Don't do this, because I know we all get into it because, oh my God, I can be rich, I can be famous, I can be celebrated, I can live in really nice houses and shit like that. But for the most part, most of us, the vast majority of actors just suffer, paying the bills, just finding a way of paying the bills, you know, going from job to job. Somebody said, well, you know, to me when I was at the university, well, did you have tenure? I said, tenure? What is tenure? There's no such thing as tenure. There are no guarantees. Once the job is over, the job is over, which was my whole thing. Anyway, please go on.
Thank you.
A little coffee.
That's
so.
okay. This is a safe space. This is our safe space.
No, I guess it's safe.
It is.
Yes, I
It
feel
really
that.
is. We can get all that out. You had a question, yeah, right there. Sorry.
Okay. I even heard it. Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So your character in DS9 was incredibly complex and precise. How has the role of Garrick impacted your life, and how has Star Trek overall impacted you?
You know, that's actually an interesting question. I mean, because Star Trek, it changed my life. For one thing, it was the longest job I've ever had in my life. I mean, it really was. It was 7 years. I wasn't a regular on it, but I was on enough times to like, you know, when you're creating a character, when you're playing a character, I'm the kind of actor where it comes from the inside out. So I'm looking for. That's why I had to write this book, because you know, if you're playing a fireman or a doctor or a plumber, I mean, you know what a person does in his or her life. You know how they use their bodies. But when you're playing an alien who is a spy and a tailor, I mean, what is that? And so over 7 years, it was this wonderful opportunity it was like this slow cooking creation. I was able to take the time, and you know, and by the time at the end of the 7 years, I've never done better work in my life. And there's one episode in particular that, you know, because it's science fiction. So like science fiction is like horror, you know, genres that people don't take seriously, or certainly they don't take seriously when it comes to award shows. You know what I mean? it's all those genres. That's low rent. It's such bullshit. It's such absolute bullshit. I mean, some of the best work, comes out of that stuff. And I did this episode in the second season of Deep Space Nine called The Wire, where Garrick is struggling with his drug addiction. And it's a story about a guy who's going cold turkey and has this friend. And this guy, Garrick, doesn't want friends. He's a loner. But he needs somebody to help him get, to kick this drug. And I've never done better acting in my life. It was like I see it now and I think, oh, wow, how did I do that? I mean, it's the way I felt when I first saw Dirty Harry. But it did change my life. It really did. And it was because of Garrick and Deep Space Nine that got me out into doing things like this, where the first time in my career, and I've been doing this, Jesus, I mean, I guess I got out of drama school in '65. So since then, I've been doing this, and it's the first time I ever met the people who support me, the fans. And that was really important. I had and it was like, and getting that kind of interaction, which you get that in the theater. You get that in the theater because it's a live room, and there's always that transaction between the audience and the actor. But film is so weird. It's sort of like antiseptic. You work all day in front of this camera, then you go home and that's it, and then months later you look at a screen and oh, that's what this is all about.
Wait, I'm so sorry. I'll get to you in a moment. When you're talking about being able to go out and meet fans and meet people that have appreciated the work, with something like this, the Trek universe, because it is so multi-generational, what is the experience of younger fans discovering Garrick and discovering that universe? Is it still universal, or do you feel that they take away from Garrick, even though they're maybe in their teens or early 20s, as back 20 some years ago when we first saw Garrick?
No, I think it's what's wonderful about this, Felicia, is that there's a whole new generation now. I mean, with Netflix and so forth, there's a whole new generation of fans. There are even grandchildren generation, it's the mystery. It's the mystery of the man. We're all mysterious. Each and every one of us is a mystery. We who knows? I mean, and each of us, processes information. We live in this world and we process information in our own individual way. There are no two of us who are the same. No one size fits all. And then when you see someone like Garrick, who is kind of alienated and is like covered, but is very pleasant, and will talk to you and whatever, and you know that there's something incredibly dangerous and weird about this man, and that you're attracted to him and repelled at the same time. It's like, as a child, I remember adults that I was attracted to and repelled at the same time. I think that it's that connection that we either make or not make with a character. I myself, I've been so fortunate. I played a handful of characters. That's why I'm here. It's because of these handful of characters that I played that were extraordinary. Extraordinary characters. I mean, they were well written. 2, they came at the right time. And 3, I was the right actor, to play them. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So you've done both movies and series TV. So if you could have your way, which would you prefer doing? Like, sort of one and done character and then moving on to another character in movies, or doing like a series character, over like a long period, exploring that character over a series?
Well, if it were a situation like Garrick, where see, now this may sound like absolute rubbish, but I mean it, because I've got my pension now and my Social Security, so I can pay the rent. But I wouldn't want to be a series regular. That's a grind. The thing is, what was ideal was Garrick. I did 39 episodes on that show over 7 years. It was perfect. And the other thing is that it maintained the mystery, because if you saw Garrick every week, oh yeah, I like him, but it's a little like, yeah, okay, I get his deal, that's that recurring thing with a good character, and a film. A film is like, it's all about the writing. If it's good writing, because nothing overcomes bad writing. I have sucked as much, if not more, than I've succeeded, and it's all because of the writing. I cannot transcend a bad script.
Someone had a question. I thought I saw someone's hand and I missed it. I am so sorry. Did they leave? Okay, go for it.
I just wanted to hear you talk a little bit about the makeup process with Garrick and what you had to go through on a regular basis.
I had one day on the film, the Hellraiser film, that kind of almost prepared me for Garrick.
Right.
And it was one of the worst days of my life. It really was. And I thought, I'm never doing this again. For one thing, they do a life mask of you, and I'm claustrophobic. And when they covered me up and they had straws up my nose to breathe, I said, it's the closest thing to death that I can ever remember. And I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. And these guys were great, the makeup guys who were brilliant in, the Hellraiser. And they talked me through it, they helped me breathe and so forth and whatever. And then, when I got the Garrick gig, again, not knowing what the hell this is about, and also not really wanting to do it. But again, it was kind of interesting, the script and the way they were describing the characters. But to be honest, I really didn't want to do it. I'd much would rather stay home and planted a new bed of flowers or something. But so I went down there at 3:30 in the morning. That was my first call, and they started putting on the stuff. There's 7 prosthetics, and then they started putting them on, and it took forever and ever, because there were only a couple of Cardassian characters before me, and I started sweating, a cold sweat, and then it was like when they finished with the prosthetics, I thought, oh Jesus, this is hard, this is really hard, I don't know if I'm going to make this, and then they put on this wig, and it was at least I had, my head was open, then they put on and they sealed me into this thing, and then it got worse, and then on top of that, because they wanted Cardassians to look like big, critters, they put on, the costumes, they made the costumes out of furniture material, so this thick, heavy furniture stuff, and they put it on me, and that was it. I called my agent. I didn't call my agent. I wanted to call my agent. In my head, I called my agent. Who do I to get out of here? I'll do it. I was so upset. And then I looked into a mirror, and this is true. I looked into a mirror, and I thought, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I'm a smart enough actor to know this is really special. This is something. And it took care of the claustrophobia. I was able to function, and I just thought it was just going to be one episode, so that was it. And when they called me back, I had mixed feelings. I was happy they called me back, but it was, I was very mixed about it. But at the beginning, it took about 4 hours. And then by the end of 7 years, they got it down to about 2 hours.
Oh, okay. First of all, shout out from the Facebook group, Garrick is Life, Garrick is Queer, Garrick is Love. Shout out from them. And second, I heard you mention claustrophobia, and your character, Garrick, was also claustrophobic. Did you bring that into the role Was that a suggestion or did it happen?
Writers are such predatory. Oh yeah, hey, you hear that Robinson's claustrophobic? Let's write that in. That was so weird. Very, very dicey.
Which kind of leads me into so are you of the classical method acting or no? Do you how do you approach it?
I'm really of every method. I really am. However it works. It's like Garrick and his sexuality. If it moves, if it's warm, if it's loving, go for it. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about my acting. You know, I mean, because each character has its own problems that you have to solve. You know, I mean, probably the hardest character I ever did was Scorpio. But thank God I was very young and I was very strong, and I was also very angry. And that's what I mean, working from the inside out, and you know, which is how I work. And so I had a natural way of connecting to the rage I felt as a human being for various reasons, and I put all of that into that character, and it was an incredible release, and it's. Yeah, I don't know what kind of method you would say, but I think I'm very practical. I'm very pragmatic. You know, whatever works, that's how I'll do it.
And again, maybe it depends on the character. Do you approach releasing that character individually as well? Can you just let it go? Can you just shut it off? Or
yeah, now I can. Now I can. But yeah, it's an interesting story. When I was doing Dirty Harry, and I didn't have much experience, and my wife Irene and I had this little apartment in San Francisco, and it was great. It was the first time in San Francisco, beautiful city, you know, blah 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 blah. And then towards the end, it was an 8-week shoot, and then towards the end of the 8 weeks, we were sitting down at breakfast, and she looked at me and she said, "I can't take this anymore." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Your face." And I said, "What do you mean my face?" She says, "It's distorted. And I didn't know what she was talking about. I had no idea. If you ever see this movie again, watch, and the movie was pretty much shot in sequence. Look at my face from the very first, the beginning of the movie, to the end, just before the Scorpio is wiped out by Harry. And you'll see that my facial structure changed. And this is a mystery to me. I mean, but that's what happens when you are over a long period of time talking about doing a show for over a period of time. That's what happens. It gets into your psyche and things change. They really do. And then what happened? The very last shot was the shot in which the character Scorpio is killed and falls into the water. That was the very last shot. It was a huge kind of like stunt shot where, you know, they had squibs, and I also, since I did my own stunt, I was in a wetsuit, and they had squibs, and they really wanted it done in one take, because if it didn't work out, then it would take forever to dry me up, get the wetsuit off, put the squibs back on, and so forth and so on. But it happened in one. I'm shot, and I fly off the dock and into the water, and cut, print, end of picture, and everybody applauds, everybody's happy, and I swam over to the dock, and I climbed up, you know, the ladder up onto the wharf there, and Irene was there the last day, and she said, "My God, you're back." And it was true. All that tension and that craziness and madness was released. So that was, and it's easier for me, you know, in a situation now to walk away. You know, when a day's work is over, I can sort of like, I have more control. I can say, okay, that's done. I'm finished, fine. But then it was like, you know, I was hanging on. I was afraid of losing the character.
You actually tipped my question a little bit. With the prominence of actors like Daniel Day-Lewis and Leonardo DiCaprio, there seems to be a shift in the industry towards classical method acting. Do you think that that's actually detrimental to acting as a profession?
No, I don't. I think, because I was classically trained. I went to school in England on a Fulbright scholarship, and it's a great training. And the thing about going to an English drama school, it's like they regard it like a trade school. If you're a shoemaker, you go to shoemaking school. I mean, if you're a cook, you go to cooking school. If you're an actor, you go to acting school. So they demystify it. So it becomes training. You learn how to become an actor, and which means you learn how to walk and to talk at the same time, essentially, and basically how to think like an actor. And someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, who's a phenomenal actor. So, I mean, just a brilliant actor, I think. It's like he also had a classical training, but see, he has soul. It's about the soul. It really is, and how you reveal yourself, your soul. If you have no soul, and you can still be a very skillful actor, but it's like it doesn't mean much. And there are actors I can think of that are very clever and very skillful, but they have no soul. And so I watch them, and I am totally untouched by them. Whereas someone like Daniel Day-Lewis has soul, and as well as craft, and that's the unbeatable combination. Because if you have, you also are not afraid to reveal yourself. It comes down to that. I mean, this is what I have. This is what I have as an actor. This is my instrument. I don't have a paintbrush. I don't have a typewriter. It's my body. This is my instrument. And if I'm not living in my body, and I'm not willing to reveal what is in this instrument, then I wouldn't be here now. You wouldn't give a shit about Andy Robinson. You seriously would not. And that's the difference between you're in your chair in a theater, whether it's film or it's a play, and you're either sitting forward or you're sitting back. And if you're sitting back, chances are you're just passing the time. And if you're sitting forward, there's an engagement that's happening. The transaction is happening. And that's part of the mystery. It really is. But it's, again, coming back to courage, the courage to reveal oneself, the courage to reveal your soul. And when I say your soul, it's like it's an amoral thing. I'm not talking about some purity. It's amoral. It's the good and the bad and the ugly. It's all of it. And we're all light and dark. And that's the other thing about Garrick. Why Garrick, I think why Garrick has remained a successful character, a popular character. It's simply because Garrick was light and dark. And the thing is, what put us on edge and put us in our seats leaning forward about Garrick is that you didn't know. You didn't know. So you had to pay attention. If you don't pay attention with people like Garrick, you're a fucking fool. Because one moment you'll find that your wallet is gone, if not worse.
What did you like doing most about Childhood 3?
Huh?
What did you like doing most about Childhood 3?
I loved Sergeant Botnick. Because he was like, I went to, as a kid, I went to an industrial school for 8 years. I had a very mixed childhood, very troubled childhood. So, it was one step above reform school. But, and there was a guy like Sergeant Botnick at this school. And he was not a kind person. And we hated him at the time. But in retrospect, I realized here he was with all these boys, because it was a boys' school. And that was his way of protecting himself. You know, he was mean, he was a racist, he was such a creep. But that's how he's sort of like with most people like that, they're so fucking afraid. They have such fear, and that's the only way that they can deal with it is just through their meanness and whatever. And so that was a tribute to this man, Sergeant Botnick.
Is it difficult? I don't want to sound, maybe difficult's not the right word. Is it challenging to try to muster up any ugliness in playing an ugly character, in playing such a despicable person? That do you get into bed with a character like that, or do you know enough to just distance yourself enough and
That's
draw?
good. That's really good. Well, this may tell you something about me that you don't want to know. For me, it's not difficult. But I have worked as a director, especially in stage, with actors who cannot go to the dark side, who don't want, who have tucked that stuff away. And the irony is that all of us have been wounded, all of us have been hurt, all of us have been traumatized in some way or another. We all have secrets. This is basically what I talk to my students about. And to protect ourselves, we take those secrets, we take that trauma, we take that pain, we take injuries. I mean, just simple physical injuries, and we put them away someplace because we don't want to, hang out in that neighborhood. And why indeed would we? But if you become an actor, that's where your most valuable information is, in that place that you've tucked away all that stuff. And if you want to be an actor, that's the place that has to be accessible. And so some people, as I say, can't do it, and others can.
Earlier today, you voiced some displeasure about working with the doll in Child's Play 3. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, okay, you were in the elevator.
Yeah.
Here comes that dark side, huh?
That spooked me, because there was a set, and obviously, and there was Chucky standing there, not connected to any. Well, there were wires on the floor, but the wires are made invisible and so forth, and it's looking at me, and it's moving. And the voice of Brad Dourif is talking. And of course, if you look in the shadows surrounding the set, there are several computer consoles. Back then, they were a little more crude than they are today. But there were computer consoles with a person on each computer console, working an arm, working a leg, working fingers, working the head, working the eyes, and talking. And it was so creepy. I mean, it really was. That's all I can say. It spooked me, and I really did not find that pleasant.
Do you like dolls now?
Oh, I have no problem with dolls, but after what? No, after that. Well, no, when that in the elevator, when that Chucky doll was there. Is it going to talk to me? Presto, you're bald.
Presto, you're bald.
In the 80s, you did like two Twilight Zone episodes. Can you talk a little bit about
The one of them was it was a recreation of an original that William Shatner did the role of the guy in the plane. Yeah, I didn't like that so much. It was okay, but the one that I loved, where I played JFK, and if JFK, had not died, and lived on, it was a beautiful script, and I so adored doing that. Of course, being a New Englander, Irish American New Englander who worshipped at the at the JFK altar. So that was such an honor.
Profile in Silver.
That's very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love the Zone. I love the Zone. But yeah, it's Profile in Silver, and yeah, you're awesome. You're just awesome in that. And speaking of playing people who are not fictitious, not fictional, you also did, because I remember watching this, you did the life story of Liberace. And can you see the facial expression now? Can you see that? I mean, you can see the similarity. And
too much of a good thing is wonderful. They used to call me Liberace when I was a kid. I swear to God.
You were phenomenal. You were phenomenal. And I believe it was released like a year after he had passed. I believe a TV movie. Track that down. Honest to God, no, you were just. That was eerie. Not Chucky dolls. Yeah. That was eerie. I meant that you just had everything down. And I'm sorry I don't remember. You had studied some piano. You had not studied some piano.
No, I'd never studied piano. I know this musician helped me to learn how to fake it. Okay. And then on very simple, just when you're playing bum bum ba bum bum bum, and I could do that, and then the camera would stand me while I did that, and then would scoot away as a. No, I no idea how to play the piano.
Did you get to where any? I don't know if Bob Mackey was involved, but I know that Bob Mackey, I thought, had designed some of Liberace.
Oh yeah,
Did you get? Sure. Were there actual?
They were his actual costumes, yeah, and they all weighed about 50 pounds apiece. Because he was this big Polish Italian guy. And his hands were immense, and so I also had his real jewelry, and they had to put tape.
Was his real jewelry?
Yeah, and they had to put tape underneath because my fingers were his fingers were immense, and I kept on cutting myself because there were all these the diamonds and stuff, and I had more nicks on my hands from the rings and stuff. No, he was amazing. And by the end of that film, I ended up loving him. I used to hate him when I was a kid because they called me Liberace.
I think we've got just a few minutes. I can take maybe a couple more, and then we'll have to wrap it up. Anybody? Yes.
Any thoughts on the change? Well, when you were making Hellraiser, any thoughts on changing over from Larry to Frank?
Well, it was a relief. Larry was really hard. Playing a guy like that is really difficult. It's so much more difficult. Frank felt like, that great scene when I'm coming down the stairs and I'm fitting up Larry's, skin, getting into that. It was so delicious. I loved it. Come to Daddy. And they put the brown contacts in and so forth. I was absolutely in my element. But Larry was this tortured, sad soul, and it was like, and who just didn't get it that that there was no love in his life, and that's all he wanted, and this woman didn't love him, and that's where the horror came out of. That's why the movie, I think has a lasting impression, because when there's no love, then horror is available. There's room for it to come into our lives.
I have a confession. I loved Larry.
I know. Listen, you can't. I know.
I was so pro Larry. I really did. I thought he was adorable. I really loved Larry.
He's so earnest and well-meaning. No, I did not love him. It was so difficult to play.
We have time for one more question right here.
Do you have a favorite character, a favorite role you've done, and why?
No, I really don't. I mean, the ones that are on the table, like Dirty Harry, like Garrick, like Larry, Frank, those, Liberace, definitely. So I love Liberace. Cobra, no. Cobra was a very boring film, but it made the down payment on the house I'm still living in today. That was such a bizarre film. At the very end, we're standing in a parking lot in Piru, California, And at the end of the movie, it's supposed to be revealed that I'm the mastermind behind all the madness, the satanic motorcycle gang. And Stallone, in the script, is supposed to grab my shirt and rip it off and reveal this huge satanic tattoo. So I show up for work early that morning because I'm supposed to go into the makeup trailer and they're going to put this big satanic tattoo on me. And the first AD comes in. Well, wait a second, Andy. Don't put anything on Andy yet. Sly wants to talk to you and the director. So I go out to this parking lot, and there's Sylvester and the director, and I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't like the ending. A lot of people, already been killed, and I don't want to, because he's supposed to kill me once I was revealed as the evil mastermind." And so I said, so he says, "I don't know," and he looks at me. Sylvester looks at me and says, "So, what do you want to do?" I don't know. I said, "Well, why don't you just punch me in the mouth?" "Oh, okay." So that's how the film ended. This is a multi-million-dollar Hollywood film, and so Sylvester Stallone's asking this schmuck, how he wants to end the film, and so indeed, so he punches me in the mouth, and they jacked up the soundtrack, to make it sound like an avalanche, and that was the end of the movie. It was so weird, but as I said, it did pay for the house. But the other characters, I have so many. All those characters are equally. Dirty Harry, Scorpio Killer is like your first love. That was my first film. Garrick is like my soulmate. Liberace, I always thought of Liberace as preparation for Garrick. They were kind of first cousins.
Aww. That's cute.
Now you got to do that Garrick Liberace cosplay mashup.
Do it.
That's
The group,
gotta
somebody
be a
in the
thing.
group has to do it.
I'm looking at you. You got to make that happen somehow in the Facebook group. Yeah.
We will.
That's phenomenal. That is awesome. We are going to have to wrap it up here, but we cannot thank you enough, really. This has been awesome. And I could talk your ear off about directing in the process because I'm that big of a geek. But
for another time for this show.
Another time.
But thank you very much.
But please, will you put your hands together for Mr. Andrew Robinson?